Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Digital Safety Files, which has kindly been organised by IIRSM's Ireland branch. My name is Holly and I'm part of the professional development team here at IIRSM. Before I hand over to our Ireland branch chair, Paul O'Shea, and our speaker for today, Bobby Gallagher, I'm just going to run through a couple of things first. So to begin with, you'll be on mute for the duration of the webinar. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask these using the chat function on the bottom right-hand corner, and we will take 5 to 10 minutes at the end of Bobby's presentation to address these. And then secondly, the webinar is being recorded and a copy of the recording will be placed on the IIRSM YouTube channel after the event. Okay, that's enough from me. Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Holly. Paul O'Shea, the current chair of the Irish branch of the IIRSM. I'd like to welcome Bobby Gallagher this morning from DFM Systems. Bobby is one of the runs a company and owns a company of that are market leaders on digital systems and O&M manual safety files, etc. for the projects there, a lot of the projects that we're working on. And I'm going to pass you over to Bobby now, who's going to give you an overview how best to deliver a digital safety file O&M on your project. Over to you, Bobby.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And I'd like to thank the IIRSM for the opportunity to talk to you today about digital safety files and operating and maintenance manuals. So, beginning with the end in mind, what is the purpose of a safety file? From our point of view, the purpose of a safety file is to deliver all of the information needed to safely operate and maintain a building, and all of the services associated with that building. Anyone working on the building doing modifications or extensions must also be able to access the safety file to alert themselves to any inherent risks associated with their intended work. And also, importantly, the safety file should contain any information needed in relation to future demolition, any risks associated with future demolition of the building. To put this in the perspective with regard to the IIRSM, I thought it would be useful to show the definition of a safety file as shown on the HSA website. And as you can see from the extract shown on this slide, a safety file contains information relevant to the health and safety risks associated with maintaining or repairing the building. And to do that, it must contain information on how the building was designed and constructed, together with information on all of the products and equipment installed within the building. Now, this can run to many thousands of documents and as-built drawings, all of which need to be accessible very quickly and easily retrieved. And also the file must be capable of being updated as new information is available or needed within the file, depending on whether you're swapping out pieces of equipment or adding new services or information onto the project itself. One of the stark reminders of the importance of information contained within the safety file is the Grenfell Towers tragedy, which claimed the lives of 72 people. The inquiry into this resulted in the Hackett report, which devoted an entire chapter to the need to maintain full building information and full building records. The inquiry heard a lot of concern regarding the ineffective operation of the current regulations and rules regarding the creation, maintenance and handover of building information and fire and safety information. It found that generally where building information is present, it's often incomplete or held in paper form, and so is not accessible always to the people who need to see it. Now, although the Grenfell Towers tragedy occurred in the UK, I think the findings of the report, particularly in relation to Chapter 8, which is regarded as or known as the golden thread of building information, it applies equally to the conditions here in Ireland. When we consider the information needs of the building owner and the facilities team, we need to understand the vast amounts of information that's generated during the design and construction phase of a project, as well as during the operation and maintenance phase post handover. This information is used by the building owner for many purposes. For example, it can be used for space planning, for operating and maintenance, for repairs and upgrades, capital asset management, and life cycle asset management. Information used in space planning systems can be of great assistance in planning workspace usage, managing meeting rooms, reporting on problems with services in the building, such as light bulbs or light fittings out of operation. But I think more use is made of the safety file and the operating and maintenance manuals, obviously for operation and maintenance purposes. And this is particularly useful when integrated with planned preventative maintenance software solutions, such as IBM Maximo or our own planned preventative maintenance application. The building owner or the FM team need to be able to find information easily within the building when they're carrying out repair and maintenance. So the typical questions they're trying to cover within the scope of the documentation that's handed over is what's the location of the equipment? What room is pump number 2 in, for example? Have I got an operating and maintenance manual for that pump? Importantly, they need to know whether the equipment is still under warranty. We see many situations where equipment is replaced when in actual fact it's probably still covered within the warranty of the project. So having access to the warranty information on the equipment is also very relevant to cost savings on the project. It's also important to know when the equipment was last maintained and is there a service log on the equipment. As I said, when you're trying to repair a piece of equipment, you need to have the information readily to hand to avoid unnecessary costs involved in either searching for information or not being able to carry out the repairs as efficiently as needed on the project. The lack of full O&M information delivered at handover can also lead to a shortened service life for the plant and equipment. And this is particularly a problem in situations where the FM team don't have the confidence in the information that was delivered, or don't have the information delivered at the handover phase of a project. And in those situations, in a lot of cases, they end up having to re-audit the building or scrape information from paper documents to populate their maintenance software. And as you can see from the slide on the screen, not being able to start maintenance operations immediately after takeover of a building can have a dramatic effect on the service life of a building. Some of the experiences that were gleaned from that study were showing that it can take up to 6 months to manually load information into a maintenance application. So it's important from our point of view, when we deliver information, that we deliver it in a format that can be consumed into the building owner's maintenance application or his software applications, and avoid the need that he has to intake in terms of trying to load that manually into a system. One of the studies that we came across also detailed the cost of lack of information when trying to fulfill work orders, and it put a value of €3.50 per square meter per year, a cost to building owners for 60% of the work orders. They believed that 60% of the work orders executed cost €3.50 per square metre more because of the lack of information. And if you do a quick calculation on that into Irish terms, a building designed to accommodate possibly 100 people could cost up to €8,000 per year just to carry out work orders. Sorry, not to carry the work orders out, but the additional cost of carrying out those work orders due to the lack of information within the system itself. There are many questions asked of the facilities manager or building owners, particularly when a property is bought or sold. Questions such as the location, the local environment, the condition of the building, energy efficiencies and running costs. However, more recently, insurers are also beginning to ask questions about the building and more detailed questions in relation to the fixtures and fittings within the building. They want to know what material the fixtures and fittings are made of, when they were last checked, what's the make and specification, for example, of the fire doors or the fire extinguishers in the building. They're asking, have these items been checked regularly? Have they been maintained? And is there a maintenance detail logged regularly? And more importantly, from their point of view, have you got a digital record of this information, and have you got digital evidence to prove that you've actually carried out the maintenance on the building? And as you can see from some of the text box on the screen, one large REIT that we work with on a regular basis believes that having a detailed and proper safety file in place can save up to 2 or 3 weeks in the sales process on a project, because the information is readily available and people don't have to go searching for that information. The other interesting fact that we came across recently was a project we were being asked fairly detailed questions by the financial controller on the project, and we're surprised at the level of detail and information that he was going into on the project. When we asked in more detail and drilled down to try and find out exactly what the issue was, it transpired that the building or the last building, the particular building we were working on with him, was an upgrade from a previous. There was a refit out taking place in the building, and the company, it was a building contractor, but it was their building. They had built it 10 years ago, had a tenant for 10 years, and now they were passing that on, getting a new tenant in for a long-term lease, and going through a major refit. And they believed that the cost of the lack of information in the file for the old building cost them $60,000. Now that was their building, their safety file, and because of the lack of information in that safety file, they put a value of $60,000 on that. So the financial controller was particularly concerned to make sure that he wasn't going to be faced with another $60,000 in 10 years' time when it came to get another new tenant into his building. We started delivering safety files as digital safety files over 10 years ago. And one of the recommendations of the Hackett report that I referenced earlier was that all information should be available in a digital format rather than in paper, so that information is available quickly and easily when people need it. If you consider the fact that if it's a paper-based system, the location of the safety file is more likely to be within some service room or a back-end room of the building. If there's a problem and an emergency on the building and you need access to that information, for example, there's a fire in the building, if there's a major instance where people are having to vacate the building, if your safety file and your information that will help you in dealing with that emergency is within the building, it's going to be very difficult to use that information. So having it in soft form, and particularly having it in a hosted version available online, is by far the most efficient way of having that information. Now, we see in a lot of cases that the specification comes out and asks for a soft copy, but I'd like to highlight the fact that simply requesting a soft copy of the safety file won't result in a digital safety file. Unless the file is delivered in a software solution complete with a simple user interface and a search engine, then you're probably going to end up with a bigger mess on your hands than if you had received it in paper. If you accept or receive a safety file containing 10,000 documents on a USB stick or CD or a hard drive, trying to find information in that when it's probably not properly labeled, probably the files are never named properly, it's going to be a bigger job than having the information in paper. So simply asking for a soft copy, in our view, will not give you the information, and probably in most cases will end up with bigger, more problematic than taking the information in paper in the first place. Some of the cost of poor information is down to the fact that operating and maintenance teams, it's been found, can spend up to 20% of their time in the asset information system looking for information rather than out on the field fixing the problems and maintaining the plant and equipment. It's been found that up to 5% of a company turnover could be saved by efficient information management. And more importantly than that, or as importantly than that, is an additional 1 to 5% savings can be made if that information is available in a user-friendly front end. So it's easy and intuitive to find information. So what do? We basically deliver what we regard as a digital building manual, which includes everything needed to operate and maintain the building. And importantly, it also includes the original design drawings and specs together with as-built details. So there's a full audit trail in terms of any changes that have taken place from the original design intent to what was actually constructed. And going back to the Grenfell Tower situation, where the only piece of information that the fire service had to work off was a photograph of the building rather than any documentation. And even then, the photograph showed conditions that didn't exist when the project was finally complete. So by being able to provide a full audit trail, including the original design intent within the safety file, it can be clearly demonstrated what changes were made, who decided to make the change, what was the purpose of the change, and why was the original design changed for whatever reason. We've delivered the digital safety file or digital building manual on some of the largest projects in Ireland, such as the Convention Centre. We recently completed the file for Capitol Dock. We've also done all of the files for Google's commercial headquarters spread over the Google Docs campus in the centre of Dublin. Google Docs campus in the centre of Dublin. Central Bank, the refit of the Central Bank, or the old Anglo-Irish shell down on North Wall. We've been lucky to also provide a safety file for most of the technology companies, large technology companies in Ireland, such as Twitter, LinkedIn, Autodesk in the One Windmill Lane project. Some of the projects we're currently working on include Wilton Park and the National Rehab development in Dunleary. So whenever we're working on a project, we see information as an asset. An asset that's almost as important, and probably as important as the actual physical asset. Because if you don't have information on the asset, it's almost impossible to get through value from the asset. You certainly won't be able to operate, certainly won't be able to maintain it, and probably won't be able to operate it as efficiently as need be. But to make information of any value, it needs to be digital, searchable, accessible, and accurate. And accurate is probably the more important of all of those functions, because if the information is out of date, it can lead to dramatic problems on the project itself. That asset information has to answer many questions, such as what's the capability of the equipment, how does it work, what parts do I need for servicing and maintaining it, what procedures do I need to follow when I'm installing it or when I'm operating or maintaining it, who supplied it, and where do I have to go to get replacement costs, and what warranties, for example, are in place. So a good safety file or a good operating and maintenance manual will allow you to get answers to all of those questions in a single place, without having to go searching for information in various different places. Now, to do that, obviously, we need to work to standards, and the current standards that we are working to in relation to building information is ISO 19650 parts 1 and 2. For anyone familiar with ISO 19650 or the old PAS 1192, it's a standard that's mainly adopted in relation to BIM or 3D modeling. Well, mainly BIM, I'd say, rather than 3D modeling on jobs, because there's always a debate as to whether it's a BIM project or a 3D modeling project, and a lot of people tend to think of BIM as purely 3D modeling. When in actual fact, we would see it as building information management or building information modeling. So the old standard PAS 1192 was replaced about 18 months ago by ISO 19650, which is now a current international standard. The slides I've put up on the screen are the UK versions of ISO 19650. Because one of the requirements of the new ISO standard is that each country adopt an annex to set some of the standards to be used, such as document types, naming convention on documents, and the like. Ireland hasn't yet implemented a national annex, so the closest we have is to take the UK national annex, which sets out some guidelines and standards in terms of how you should name documents and assets within a safety file or an asset information system. A safety file is only as good as the information that's in the file. So care needs to be taken in terms of collecting that information to ensure that it's relevant, that we don't end up with hundreds and hundreds of pages of catalogue cuts, when really what we're looking for is 2 pages out of that catalogue to reference or detail the information on the particular equipment, rather than the catalogue of equipment that might or might not have been purchased for the project. All of the projects we work on, all of the digital safety files we build using technical authors who are qualified and experienced in building information systems. We use architectural technicians and engineers to ensure that the information that's in the file is relevant to the service and to the building in which we're working on. We manage the whole process, collecting the information from subcontractors and main contractors, reviewing that information before presenting it to the design team for approval. And we would work closely with the PSDP on all projects to ensure that the information that's being collected is fit for purpose and is the information required on the project itself. The other important item to note about the benefits of using a digital safety file rather than a paper-based file is the ability to link information, so we can present that information or display that information in 3 or 4 different locations. But in all cases, it's still the same single piece of information. And doing it that way, we avoid the need for the user to move from sections of the file to one section of the file to the other. So having to go to one place to find as-built drawings, have to go to somewhere else to find operating and maintenance instructions, that's time consuming and inefficient. So it's far better to be able to collect all that information and present it in one single interface, and being able to duplicate the information, being able to link the information rather than duplicate the information allows us to make best use of the files. Other technologies that can be used in terms of collecting information into the safety file and operating and maintenance manuals is using smartphones. Now we've developed an app that will allow us to collect asset information on an existing building and create a safety file and operating and maintenance manuals from that. But we also use the same technology to verify information going into the safety file. So if we visit site towards the end of construction and take photographs comparing that and details comparing that information with the information that's actually sitting in the file, that's information that was given to us or collected by us at the start of the project. We're now able to, with the smartphone, verify that that same information matches the model numbers and product numbers of the equipment that's been installed on the project itself. Where there's a 3D model on the project, we can extract information from that 3D model to form the basis of the safety file. So every item in a construction project, if the drawings are produced from 3D models, and in most cases on large-scale buildings these days, that's what's happening. If the information is in the 3D model, because the model has been used to produce the drawings, then we can take that information from the model and it gives us a schedule of equipment and services and finishes that we need to document within the safety file itself. It ensures that all of the information needed for the file is present in the file. And by using the linking system that we do, the building owner is actually able to walk through the safety file. In fact, he's able to walk through the building virtually, clicking on every object in the virtual walk through the building to make sure he has the information and the documentation on the file before he occupies the building. Anyone familiar with COBie will recognize some of the information that's up on the screen at the moment. COBie is an exchange mechanism or an exchange format for information to allow information to be exchanged from one software solution to another. But it's a standard that's been called up on most BIM projects at the moment, where the owner is trying to make sure that he's receiving the operating and maintenance information for use in his CAFM systems or his maintenance systems at the end of the project. And we've developed means and mechanisms to import information from COBie spreadsheets to populate the information within the safety file itself. These are just some of the shots of a COBie spreadsheet. It's not a pretty animal in any way, shape or form, but if it's used intelligently and properly, it can save a lot of time and effort in populating a CAFM or a maintenance system. Regardless of whether we use COBie or anything else, the most important thing from our point of view is to make sure that there's a clear asset naming convention being used across all of the documentation and all of the information in a system. If someone's calling a piece of equipment one item in the drawing, a different description or name for that same item in the operating and maintenance manuals, then you'll never find information within the safety file. Now that really comes to its own in relation to 3D modeling, because the standards used for 3D modeling don't necessarily lend themselves very friendly to, or very easily to, FM friendly names for items of equipment. They're usually named, as you'll see on the Revit text on the screen, they're named to suit the software rather than to suit the FM needs on the job. But with some guidelines and instructions, it's not a hard job to make sure that there's commonality of asset naming across all of the information sources on a project. The other way of collecting information from our point of view is to provide a platform which allows all of the participants in the project upload their information directly to the safety file. Now, it won't go directly into the file. It goes as far as a review gate, and then one of the engineers or technical auditors within the receiving organization will review that information before it's presented and pushed through into the safety file itself. At all times, we should be able to, and any decent safety file should be able to report on the progress of the file during construction on the project, and we use a 10-stage sort of traffic light system to show what information is required on the project and what information has been collected at any stage during the construction of the project, to ensure that when we reach conclusion or PC on the project, that the file is ready for handover, rather than scrambling around in the last couple of weeks or the last couple of days trying to populate a safety file. Information overload can be as bad as no information, so care needs to be taken to make sure that we don't end up with a tsunami of information coming at the end of the construction when you don't have enough time to review and check that information. So from our point of view, we want to see the ability that we can start on a project at the initial construction stage and then tip away slowly at that project over the next 12 months or 8 months, whatever duration of the project. So the information is collected progressively, and we have the time to review the information to make sure that it's fit for purpose and suitable for the job. At this stage, I'd just like to take you through a brief overview of the digital building manual as we would see it. As I said way back at the start, it's designed to ensure that there's a complete library of information of everything needed to operate and maintain the building. What we will include in our safety files is a complete asset register, a schedule of warranties, a schedule of maintenance, and we also have the ability to carry out life cycle asset calculations for management functions, and the file itself, to be truly effective, should be capable of operating online, standalone, or on a local area network. So there's no barrier to people being able to access and use the information. So typically, our system will include a structure of all of the information. We generally break it down by elements of construction, whether it's site and external, mechanical services, electrical services, and so on. Once you get into the service you're looking for information on, all of the information, whether it's the documents, the drawings, or the assets, they should all be available and accessible in a single screen on the job, which can be searched. And typing in a single keyword or a group of keywords on the search engine should be able to bring you back every reference to the information within the file itself. Once you find the file you're looking for, the internal viewer will give you quick and easy access to that information. I mentioned earlier the ability to integrate with 3D models. So in this situation, we can select a clarifier or a heat exchanger or in the building, and selecting one link on the right-hand side, sorry, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can go straight to the location within the safety file where that information resides. So from there, we're in the asset register, we're able to get the full details on the asset, what's the serial number, model number, so on. And then on the various different tabs within the screen, you can get all the documentation associated with that particular asset itself. The system will include a full asset register, which includes also supplier details and manufacturer details. All of the warranties available on the project should be collected in a single location, so the building owner knows what conditions he has to fulfill to maintain the warranty, and also when the warranty is due to expire. And that can be used to do a quick audit around the equipment a month or so before the warranties are due to expire, to make sure that everything is still operating as it should be on the project. As we collect information and operate the maintenance manuals, we're extracting maintenance requirements from that so that we can build a ready reckoner for the building owner, showing him everything he needs to do in terms of planned preventative maintenance on every component in the project, including, for example, the wall finishes or the green roof on the project itself. We include a full CRM of all the suppliers and manufacturers, so that replacements can be easily and quickly sought or purchased. We also use QR codes within the system, and that will allow us to place a QR code, or lately we're starting to use NFC codes that can be placed on items of equipment. And using either the QR code or the NFC code, a service technician can scan the code and access the information on the equipment very quickly and very easily. Lifecycle asset management, I mentioned earlier, is the ability to be able to create 20-25-year predictions in terms of what equipment and what costs are associated with replacement equipment over the next 10 or 20 years. And on some projects, we're actually producing a sinking fund cost analysis on the project while it's still in construction. So the building owner, when he receives the safety file, knows what level of sinking fund or what money he needs to set aside over the course of the next 20-25 years to cover the replacement cost of the equipment within his building. One of the important things I mentioned earlier was being able to access the file in an online system. We work on the basis that all of our systems are web enabled rather than web based, and by that I mean that the system should be able to work whether you have an internet connection or not. So it'll work in an offline version or an online version. Online, when you have the access, and you can access it from any part of the world, but if you lose your internet connection, you should still be able to access that information. I'm just coming towards the end of the presentation, but I wanted to touch briefly on 3D viewers, because one of the things that are propping up frequently in recent months is the use of 3D viewers, or a bit where a 3D model is used on a project. Building owners can find it difficult to navigate a 3D model when presented with something like Navisworks or Celebra Model Checker or Model Viewer, because you need some sort of dexterity with a mouse to be able to navigate into the building. And if you're not doing it on a daily basis, it can be tricky and cumbersome to do that, to get into the point where you find the equipment. So what we've found over the last 12 months is a system that allows us to navigate a 3D model from a 2D floor plan. So we can imagine this as the PDF floor plan of the building, and I'd like to see the details on the equipment in this recreation room. All I've got to do is place my finger, using an iPad, place my finger in the recreational room. I get a small dialog box that offers me a 3D view of the room, and by pressing that, I'm straight into the 3D view of the room. Now, if I want to move to a different place on the screen, I can navigate to a different part of the building by just moving my finger to a different room on the 2D floor plan, and straight away I'm getting the 3D view of the room. And we find that it's a much more intuitive way for building owners who are not familiar with navigating 3D models to be able to visualize the information very quickly and very easily from a set of floor plans. The last piece is being able to make the system live, or maintain it as live. And again, going back to that Hackett report, if the information remains static at the point of time when the building was handed over, then in most cases it's going to be out of date by the time a real problem arises on the job or on the project, and you need to get access to that information. So keeping it online, but also keeping it in a situation that you can actually upload new information to the file, results in maintaining a live system. Within our system, if it's being hosted on the website, you can actually upload your planned preventative maintenance schedule into a calendar, and using that calendar, allow the service engineer to upload his service records to the website as he completes the service on the project. Or if equipment is swapped out because it needs to be replaced, that can easily be done by uploading into the website, and that way it keeps the full safety file as a living document on the project. And that brings me to the end of the presentation as I have it. I hope I've covered everything that you expected to find from information on safety files and operating and maintenance manuals, and I'm happy to take any questions now if I hand it back to Paul.
Thanks very much, Bobby. Very insightful and comprehensive review of your digital systems. I suppose just summarise there, the importance of planning from the start, Bobby. The overall planning in that when a job is an inception stage and coming through the expectation of the client at the end is very important, and how it's managed then through all your processes. And I think that's a clear message there, that the key is to plan early for the end result. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself and the IIRSM and the committee very much for delivering that webinar. Very good and comprehensive review there, and we look forward now to the questions and answering section. Can you please upload any of the questions you have?
Okay.
I've got the first question for you there.
Go ahead.
Hi, Holly. Just going to go through some questions that if anyone, so we're getting a few questions coming up, but I suppose the first question I talked about planning, and from your own point of view, how early do you feel you need to get involved in a project to best optimize to benefit the project that you're involved in?
Well, typically we'd like to get involved in the project at the very early start. If we wait until the end of the project, a lot of the early stage finishes may be gone from the project, and we have difficulty trying to secure the information needed for the safety file. If we're involved from the start, we can ensure as packages are finished and contractors are ready to move on to other jobs that the information that they've delivered for the file is complete. So it's better for us to get involved at an early stage on a project.
So when you say early stage, I know some of the conversations we've had with our own crews that like early stage is literally during having that discussion in the design phase with the client and ensuring that the client understands the expectation, because I know that whole soft copy versus digital copy gets confused a lot. So having a digital working file, searchable file, editable file is very important.
Yeah, I think getting involved at the original, the basic planning and design stage allows us to interact with the building owner and ensure that we've covered his needs in building the file, because in a lot of cases they may have particular software solutions or planned preventative maintenance applications that they want to use when they occupy the building. So if we can deliver the information to them in a format that will be consumed into that system at the end of the project, at the end of the construction project, it's a much more efficient way of delivering the information.
Very good. So Ben Bourne has a question for you. What's the difference between a safety file and an O&M?
Essentially, they're one and the same. I mean, a safety file will encompass O&Ms. An O&M won't necessarily encompass a safety file. So the safety file, if you like, is the overall umbrella that will include many different O&Ms within the overall scope of the safety file.
Very good. So Justina Kluska is say obviously that we're moving into large residential builds now in the industry, and the BER building energy rating for the Irish market. Should this be a safety file item?
I think so. When we talk about speaking, just on the basic standards or the legal definition of a safety file, you could argue that a BER has nothing to do with the safe operating and maintenance of the building. But if you're to make the safety file of true value to the building owner, it should include everything. So we would include planning permission details, fire site application and grant, any legal documents, BCAR, ancillary certs and compliance certs. And I think we would also include, where we can, the BER certs and ratings.
Yeah, very good. Ben Bourne with a silly question, but as he says himself, who owns the safety file, Bobby?
The building owner should own the safety file and does own the safety file, because he's a legal obligation to be in possession of the safety file and to make that available to anyone else carrying out work, any construction work on his building, and that includes, as I said in the presentation, that includes demolition, or even the cleaning of the windows on the outside of a high-rise building. That will be considered as construction related. So yeah, building owner owns the safety file.
Very good. Now somebody's flagged there was double sound. I think there was a little bit of just double sound at the end there, so that's passed. Stephen Rowe, very good question. He's thanking you for the presentation. And just the statutory duty on building owners to have a digital safety file. I suppose there's a statutory duty to have a safety file, but in relation to a digital safety file, could you expand?
No, the requirement is that building owner is in possession of a safety file. Now, that can be a paper-based safety file. It could be the mess on a CD of a soft copy. But if you're going to go to the particularly now with the size of buildings and BIM used on most projects, it makes perfect sense to go with a digital file, because if you compare it with some of the slides that I showed way back at the start of the presentation, the owner or the FM team on behalf of the building owner, that's where the real benefit's going to come from a safety file. And if they've got to spend 2-3 months either digitizing information that they've received in paper or re-inputting information into a maintenance application, then it makes little sense in that respect. So I would say, yeah, go with a digital safety file, but will satisfy the legal end if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I suppose to answer Stephen's question from the safety point of view is that there's a legal obligation on you to have a safety file, and then obviously the onus on the building owner to keep it up to date. But if you're looking at a paper-based one, and our evidence of going in to do fit-outs, large fit-outs on old buildings or new buildings, if it's a paper-based safety file and you're producing that to the incumbent tenant fit-out design team, it's very hard when you've got 50 or 60 folders stuck in a back room, or if you're trying to sell the building and you require it. So definitely, Stephen, there's the digital safety file. What we see, it allows you to update it with all your quarterly certs and your annual inspections and all, and then it's a live document, whereas it's paper based. Somebody takes a drawing out or somebody takes a cert out, the whole file is compromised because that can disappear into the ether, and that's what happens. David Newcomb, the safety file for new, is a safety file required for new as well as old buildings? Good question. Do you want to answer that, Bobby?
Well, the safety file is required for all buildings. If you have an existing building 10, 20 years old, you should really be in the possession of a safety file. So yeah, no, the bottom line is the building owner needs to have a safety file for his building, full stop.
Yeah, and I suppose, David, just on what I was answering the question from a safety point of view, a health and safety point of view, complying with those regulations, that an owner of a building must be able to provide information to anybody that's either doing work in the building, on the building, or around the building, so they can do it safely. So if you take anybody that's doing any large demolitions, fit outs, retrofitting, refurbishing, or work on the facade, or cleaning or maintenance of the building owner, no matter what age the building is, should be able to provide information to allow those people to do their work safely. In the older buildings, around the whole asbestos and the cleaning, it's a very critical bit of information. So Andrew Halpin, is there a time limit on delivery of safety files to the building owner? Does the partially complete file suffice? Yeah, very relevant question. Bobby, I'll let you answer that one.
Thanks. I don't believe a partially completed file suffices, and I believe the file should be delivered at PC or before PC. All too often, files are still, there's a scramble trying to still complete the file months and months after it, and the longer time goes on, the less interested people are in providing the information to the file. They've moved on to other projects, and it becomes much more difficult. So most contracts that we'd be involved in, or most projects we'd be involved in, it will be a contractual requirement for PC to deliver a file. I think from even from your own point of view, Paul, from PSDP point of view, I think that's contractually you need that in place before you can occupy the building.
Yeah, very good. I suppose from handing over a safety file can be a bugbear on any project. I think that come back to planning. I know from our own experience that like planning from the very early stage of the project, also planning on a particular time frame in advance of PC and managing the expectation of everyone. All too often, it used to be the case, and we hope that we're moving away from it, that we get the PC and then somebody would say, well, where's the safety file? I know from our own point of view, we plan like a month in advance of PC that everybody has fed in their comments. And as you said, I think the word there, partially complete, think the word that needs to be used is, and it is used at PC, is substantially complete. So ultimately you should arrive at the safety file at PC that it's literally the opinions of compliance and sign-offs from the relevant design team members that are the only thing outstanding, because they'll have to wait for PC to provide them. So we would see that as a small single-digit percentage of what's left. If you're getting the PC and you have to do a full open heart surgery job at that stage on every element of the build, yes, you're going to drag on for months, because everybody's heading for the next job and the priority goes off that job. Last question there from Justina. Just a safety file content sheet. I suppose it's you're looking to say what should all be included in it, and I'd leave that with you, Bobby. You've quite a robust matrix that might benefit.
Yeah, it's nearly like how long is a piece of string. Essentially, you need everything relevant to operating and maintaining the package or the service that you've supplied on the project, or what's on the project. Now we would have a fair extensive database of the information needed package by package, and that's been collated over the last 5-10 years as we work through different projects. So I showed a matrix that we would have, breaking the information down into 10 parts. So typically we'd look for a narrative or a scope of work on the project, something to describe the package of works in half a paragraph or a page. We'd also look for every package, we'd look for a list of either materials or equipment used, so that we can then ensure that we get data sheets, user guides, operating the maintenance instructions, tech data sheets, specs and the like, and drawings for the service of the package. But I don't think there's a sort of a ready-made list that you can pick out that gives you I need these 10 documents, because depending on the package, it could be 20 documents or 50 documents needed to describe and document the service that's been installed.
Yeah, I suppose to finish out on that, I suppose that goes back to the planning at the early stage, getting in, and the expectation. There's a statutory requirement to have a certain level of all the statutory information, and then you have the combination of safety file and O&M information. So I think that's the last of the questions there, Bobby. I think it's I think all the questions covered all the pertinent points that we would like to understand about safety file O&M. Again, I'd like to thank you, Bobby, for your time and effort with that presentation. It's been very useful and very insightful, and the digital safety files are the future. The more functional the safety file O&M for the building, the better. And you've demonstrated the cost savings in the long term on a project, that if it's done properly, and that outweighs the cost of implementing it from the first. So on behalf of the Irish branch of the IIRSM and the committee members, I'd like to thank you very much again. And
if anyone has any questions that I think of afterwards that we haven't covered, or they want to get in touch, I have my contact details up there, but it's basically bobby@dfmsystems.com. So send me an email, and I'm more than happy to give any information I can.
Thanks for that, Bobby. Thanks for that. Sorry, Paul. I'll share the details afterwards when I send the recording round to everyone as well, so that people can recap in their own time. And thank you to Paul and the rest of the Ireland branch as well today for organising this for us.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Right. Enjoy the rest of your days, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.